There's nothing I love more than when an epic product makes a return in the future, hopefully bigger and better than ever before. Which is why when Antec was like, hey, you want to check out our legendary revival of the Antec 900? I was like, absolutely I do. Like Dwight Schrute. Absolutely I do.
900?
Ah, shit. They sent the wrong one. All right, jokes aside, it was sent to us by the loving and caring handling of FedEx, as you can see right there. All right, so like I said, the Antec 900. Actually, I had one of those cases, and my friend had one of those cases, and it was one of the first cases I really started doing like case mods on, because unfortunately the original Antec 900 just lacked any sort of cable management at all. I did a small water cooling build in there. I ended up having a Thermaltake big, I think it was called the Big Water or something like that back then. I can't remember, it was 1/4-inch tubing. It was super tiny, ironically, for it to be the Big Water. But Antec's kind of been surprising the hell out of us these last couple of years as they've sort of really just kind of reintroduced themselves. They never left the market, but they really reintroduced themselves into the market. And they're reviving some really, really big names amongst their own like ecosystem, if you will. So the P182 is still one of my favorite cases of all time from back in the day. I'd love to see them. I hope they're working on maybe some sort of a P182 revival. If they've done the 900, then obviously the P182's got to be on the radar somewhere. But this is interesting because the Antec 900 back then was unprecedented airflow. In a time when it wasn't really all that important. I mean, yeah, we had Fermi. I mean, Fermi was new at the time. We all know the 480 and the 580 were absolute furnaces, so airflow was huge, which is why dual 200, there's a loose screw in there, which is why dual 200 millimeter fans for intakes, as well as big exhaust fans on top, was such a nice to have back then. Now with today's hardware, it just smells like new. Today's hardware is definitely demanding. Now here's the thing, this is an interesting time though for case development, because companies have to not just, like we as gamers absolutely hate the letter A and the letter I put in that order, but let's face it, the reality for these brands to survive, I need to find whatever screw came loose. The brands need to survive by supporting whatever the trends are. Doesn't mean you can't, ooh. That just screams workstation.
Yeah.
Dang, too bad this case wasn't out when we did your Threadripper build, because, fuck! Oh, something about the what the, what the fuck?
He literally walked away, came back, and then shot them again. Third time?
Little baby one, okay. Woo! As I was starting to say before I was so rudely assaulted, was, you could, so, workstations, Edge AI, all that sort of stuff, developers are, you need to kind of have a chassis that sort of fits everybody's needs. Now here's the thing, when it comes to gaming, airflow is key, obviously. We know having your components run too warm leads to throttling, which can lead to lowered performance, which nobody is happy with when it comes to a gaming rig. So when you build a chassis like this, which I want to call it minimalistic, because even though it looks really cool, it's very minimalistic in that it doesn't have sharp angles, doesn't have RGB all over it. It's just, here's your rectangle of airflow, which fits both those needs. Now the other things that makes it definitely, I'm trying to figure out how to open it here. One of the other things that also makes it very workstation ready is the fact that it also supports all form factors of motherboard. It supports BTF. It supports SSI EEB, which are the very wide like server boards. Obviously it supports ATX and everything below that. It'll even fit 4 GPUs in here if you're running a workstation where you need all the GPUs stacked up on top of each other and you're using it for rendering or whatever other language models you're working on or whatever. It's kind of a one size fits all. Very thick 4mm glass frame on both ends. We've got mushroom tabs up top. We've got 3 tabs on the bottom for lining it all up. But as you can see here, it is just one big, giant, flat, open chunk of a case. So it doesn't matter if you're running the biggest gaming graphics card on the market for just gaming purposes, or you're running 4 Blackwell 6000s, I don't know, they'll fit in here. That's the cool part about that. In fact, it's got 160 millimeters worth of GPU clearance and 495 millimeters worth of GPU length. To give you a sense of scale of the size of this case, this is an Astral, and it looks small in here. But when we talk about cable management and such, you can see we have 2 sets of grommets. This would be for like standard ATX, ETX, or EATX, and then these ones way off to the right would be for like your SSI EEB server style boards. Now it comes with quite a few pre-installed fans. We've got one Tranquil 140 exhaust fan in the back, 3 of those same 140 Tranquil fans installed on the front for 420 millimeters worth of intake. It does support 200 millimeters on the front as well. It has a movable bracket, so you can scoot that bracket over and go with bigger fans, which would be ultimately quieter, but more CFM, so more overall airflow. And then we have 2 of the P12Rs, or reverse blades, that are installed right here in the center chassis, or center part, giving direct cooling right up to your graphics cards. And then we have, as you can see right here, 2 SSD mounts on the front, which is an interesting spot to put them, but I digress. They're there. I guess it makes sense I didn't put a fan there because the power supply goes right underneath it, so that would just be blocked off by that. But you can see with this side panel right here that pops off, we have a lower basement that has room, or 2 hard drive cages right there, so you can install more SSDs and or spinning drives, and there's also some on the back bracket we'll take a look at in a second here. And then looking at the top right here, you can see the bracket stops short because this is where all the front I/O and buttons and such are. So you can fit a 280 or 240 in terms of fan configuration. So 2 120s or 2 140s on the top right here. It is not an adjustable bracket in terms of setting width to go with like a 200 millimeter or anything like that. So if we're gonna be putting an AIO in here, which we are, a 360 AIO, we will be removing these 140s on the front, and we'll be putting the 360 on the front, which technically I probably would have gone with like a 420 cooler for like, cause we're gonna do Threadripper, we're gonna throw our other Threadripper CPU in here, and I'm gonna keep this together because I kind of want to start playing around with maybe, I don't know, throwing together a server of some sort, whether it be Minecraft or something. I don't know. I've never really played around with any of the horsepower that's capable of, you know, today's high-end hardware. But anyway, I digress. A 420 in the front would have been nice. However, one thing you have to consider is it might be kind of hard to see. You can see you have a cutout in the front for the radiator to dip down, but right underneath there is one of the drive cages. So if we went with a 420, I think we might impact on that. We'll figure that out as we're building, because that's one of the reasons why I like to build in these cases when I do these reviews, because then we learn those types of nuances. And in fact, the first thing I was checking right here when I look in the lower basement for our drive cages right here, which you can see has 2 sleds, they do not reposition. So you can see on the bottom right here, get this out, filter comes out the front, thank God. You can see these screws are single location. So they don't allow us to move it farther away from the front to have that 420 rad like fit down in the bottom and not impact with that. Now technically you could still do it, but you're gonna lose the cage. You have to take that front cage out, and then you could run like a 420 radiator in the front for a big AIO, but then you lose some of your storage capacity. That's one thing to keep in mind. Speaking of storage capacity, you can see we have 3 more SSD sleds right there. Now here's the thing, the amount of physical storage like this is a nice to have. I don't think many people these days are necessarily running 2.5-inch SSDs. I mean, maybe they could be running some, you know, multiple terabyte enterprise style SSDs over SATA. But I think a lot of people these days that are running a high-end workstation are probably running some sort of a M.2 Gen 5 card that you could put a whole bunch of drives on there. And that's going to allow you to expand and run faster storage than what you would get over SATA. Now, obviously, you've got SCSI and all these other types of enterprise solutions that you could use, but having support for large spinning and then obviously 2.5-inch SSD, it's allowing you to have as much compatibility as possible. Now let's see, can the top pop off? Yes. So top pops off. You can see our filter is, I believe, just magnetic on here. Yep. Just pops in right there. We got magnets on the corners. So as you can see, they just want to stick to the first bit of metal they see. We heard you wanted flow. No, I'm not about to start rapping. Unless it's Christmas time. And then on the front, obviously that just pops off. Same magnetic filter style for the fan filter. And the magnets are strong. Ugh. You get the idea. They're on there, magnets are strong, And then this is the movable bracket as I showed you. So you can see on the bottom here, we have a few different mounting locations. So it'll support just about every fan size between 120 up to 200. Because remember, they're rare, but there are 120s, 140s, 160s, 180s, and 200s. So you can kind of pick and choose what's going to be the most beneficial to you. But these brackets are independent. So that means if you're installing an AIO or something, you have to do it in the case like this and then screw the fans to the bracket. Or you could technically take the brackets off, screw them to the AIO radiator, and then move that whole thing in. It's not like a single removable bracket like you're kind of maybe used to seeing in certain cases, but it gives you the most compatibility this way by having individually, bracket widths that can adjust. And then here's that cage I was talking about here. If you wanted to run a 420 that has to use that lower area right here, you have to lose that drive cage. Now, because we don't really use big spinning drives, we'd be perfectly okay with that. This is an interesting choice to me. I guess they chose, did that thing finally fall? Okay, here's the screw that finally has been clicking around down in there. Like I said, the loving, caring, gentle hand of FedEx. I was a FedEx driver, I know. Anyway, I think it's interesting that they chose to block some of the top in lieu of having as much intake on the front as possible. I guess it makes sense though, honestly, because this allows you to just have more intake, more positive pressure. And then we've already tested this, like hell, some of the best configurations don't actually run any exhaust fans on the top. Just let it be full, just full positive pressure. Now, because we are gonna be running Antec's Threadripper AIO on this, it's a 360, I will be relocating 2 of these fans right here, probably to up here as exhaust. So because they're pre-installed, I don't want to lose them, and we're just gonna stick 2 of them up here, and then we should be good to go. So we have these reverse fans here. Don't see any fan mounts on the bottom. So those middle fans right there will just pull air right up through this grill, and then it's gonna supply fresh air right to the graphics card. One other thing that's really interesting about this case is you have an optional, they're calling it a shift. I guess everyone calls it a shift these days. But instead of having the power supply be in a normal orientation, you can utilize this hole right here, have the power supply go sideways so the cables are pointing straight back rather than long ways towards the cages right here. That way, if you for some reason had a really long power supply or an old school power supply and you're running multiple graphics cards, so let's say you're running 4 graphics cards, you got PCI Express cables going everywhere, right? Then you could shift the power supply and then use this bracket that would allow you to then relocate the power plug from here, right, over to just dirty showing how this would go, kind of like that, right? The only downside to keep in mind is if you're running a really big high-end power supply, this cable is not going to work with that more than likely because they tend to use a different plug. Anything over 1300 watts tends to have that plug, which just Phil calls an unimpressed face. The reason for that is just gauge. And because of the fact that if you were going to be trying to use this as a high-end workstation with multiples of graphics cards that are drawing a lot of power, you'd probably be running a high-end power supply that uses that cable, and so that would make this shift not really compatible with that. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be useful in certain scenarios, but just wanted to point that out. It's usually a problem where the plug is not compatible with high-end. All right, with that said, let me go ahead and do this build. It's gonna be interesting looking because the board is white and this is a black case. Let's go ahead and build in this thing. I've never seen such big hardware look so small. It's like the Antec 900 stands for 900 cubic meters of volume. I mean, look at this. We could go push, pull, all kinds of extra space on the front if we wanted and still be able to fit something long like a Astral in there. Could technically fit 2 Astrals in here, which they show in there. Not that you would actually put 2 Astrals in anything, even for like a workstation, I don't think. But yeah, it fits with plenty of room. I do like their AIO, how it's like sideways like this, because it puts the tubes just in the right length to be able to get it to reach the front. It's not putting any kind of crazy tension or pressure on there. Keeps the pump under the top of the rad when it's all the way up so that we don't deal with aeration getting in, or aerating and getting air picked up in the pump. That's what I'm trying to say. Plenty of airflow, obviously. I ended up on the back just going with the shift power supply from Corsair because it's a 1200 watt, which is plenty for what I want to do with this rig. I'm not going to be putting a 5090 in here at all. Like if I'm doing a server, gaming server or anything like that, it's more about the RAM, it's more about the CPU. But I threw that Astral in here just for the sake of size, right? But I do like how I can, if I use a shift type power supply like that, the cables come out sideways without having to use the shift bracket. But the 1200 watt uses the standard plug anyway, so if it wasn't a shift, I could have still used that relocation bracket. It's funny though, the cable management looks kind of meh in my opinion, even though we have all these different channels and stuff, because the case is so big to run like squared along different channels and stuff. The cables wouldn't have been long enough. I don't think it's really translating on video just how large this chassis is. Things are pretty straightforward. There's nothing weird. There's plenty of room. You don't have to really think about things too much. But what I was starting to say is about this cable management being kind of separated out like this is 24 pin, this is front panel connector, this is EPS, this is 12 volt 2x6 right there. The thing about workstations is they have to be easily serviceable and quickly serviced, because of the fact that if I had everything bundled in like like a umbilical cord of cabling, if I had to remove something and replace it because it went bad, then I have to unbundle everything. So I kind of like the fact that things are separated out like this. That way it's easier to sort of identify the cabling that's needed and then go from there. I still think a 420 in this would have made more sense just from the perspective of filling out the case. Or even an SSI EEB motherboard would have been kind of nice because then it would have filled out the space. But again, that's the thing about the 900 now, is it the 900, the original 900 was legendary for being one of the first cases to offer so much airflow and support for high-end hardware for the time. I gotta figure out where I'm gonna plug this in. Now it just looks like when you plug something in PC Building Simulator. I'll just put an extension or something on there. That's the negative though about really large chassis, is not a lot of the cable runs are really designed for something that long. I mean, look, it's like a guitar string. I won't leave it like that, don't worry. I need to plug something in. The challenge with like standard mid-tower cases or large format cases is not having enough options, if you will, to bundle up the cables and make them nice and neat. There's just not enough channeling, whatever. There's always challenges there. On a really big case like this, like I just showed you, the challenge is cable length, because most manufacturers are lengthening or making their cable lengths what's kind of considered standard for regular full tower, maybe mid tower case. So this is a true full tower. And I feel like a lot of mid towers these days are as big as full towers used to be. So it's kind of like full towers have become fuller towers. And it just makes it a little bit challenging, but this still isn't terrible. Like, it's not. In fact, you can see it's kind of thick right there. There's still not going to be any issue with getting this back panel on, because as you can see, the back panel has its own recess depth in there. So if I just tap that on right there, and then, there we go, line it up. It snaps on there with authority. Those mushroom tabs are really tight because it's new. But yeah, there we go. Oh, it got heavy real quick. What should we do with it? Like, I'm showing my age now, because back in the day, you could host your own Counter-Strike servers, you could host your own Quake servers. I mean, you can still do that now, technically, but I don't know what to do with that. I kind of want a server of some sort. I haven't served anything in decades, and I thought this would be the perfect example for that. This would be neat to just have like a bunch of different distros and stuff on potentially, but I think the sky's the limit. I'm just asking you guys what you think we should do with this, because I don't know, I've never had something like this this powerful just set up permanently, minus this graphics card, to do something with. So sound off in the comments below what you think we should do with this. Once again, a huge thanks to Antec for sponsoring today's video and allowing us to take a look at the Antec 900. Legendary case returns. It doesn't share a single design cue from the original Antec 900. And the original Antec 900 probably would have come up to about here and here, to be honest. But again, the Antec 900 back in the day challenged the standard case design, and then this one's kind of doing it, but more in a workstation theme. Phil, would you have used this as your workstation case if it was available when we built yours?
That's what I was joking about.
Yeah, I do think this looks more workstation-y and more serviceable than the ProArt was. And the ProArt had some things about it we actually were not happy about, so.
Yeah, and it's like the same size, but the ProArt, we were running into like weird, like, oh, this is too small for some reason.
Yeah, like 5 millimeters too small here, 2 millimeters too small there. This just is just a big old open chassis. Now it's not cheap. Forgot to talk about price. It's $299 USD. It's not cheap, but you can feel every bit of the quality in that. Like all the edges, as you can see, are curved. Like they're all rounded and such. I only mention that not because I'm saying, oh, look, round edges, $300 worth it. I'm just saying these types of manufacturing tooling to do this type of edging and whatnot is very expensive. So this is not a case that's just from some manufacturer's catalog of here's what we can make and slap your plastic skins on the outside. These are true one-off, ground-up designs from Antec. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Sound off what you think we should do with this build down in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.